Welcome to the Vicki Files. We've got Victoria Johnson with me, aka Vicki, and we're going through episode 4. And so this is an interview that we're having with her, and this is about Vicki coming, who's new to the workforce. The age that I've written down that we're going through is 16 to 29. However, there may be a part 2 of this because there's quite a lot that Vicky tells me that she's actually gone through in this stage. So where we're going to start is, where she's new to the workforce and, going into that travel, and she's got a slave boss. Now, she has mentioned a little bit about this previously. So we're just going to go straight into the first questions. But Vicky, welcome.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi,
It's so good to
everyone.
have you here. And
Thank you.
where are you today? Are you still in your hometown?
Yes, I'm still in Austin, Texas, in my
Beautiful.
study right now. With no, actually, I don't have any background because of the other stuff I do, acting stuff. You've got to have a blank background. So it's
You
not like
do.
I'm boring, but it looks boring. All you can see is my head. Ugh.
Ah, yeah, but I love it. It's a beautiful face to have with us today. So, starting off, here we go. Can you tell me about your first job after school and what do you remember most about that time?
Ooh, Frank. Right. Well, it was travel. I worked for a travel agent because I always wanted to be a travel agent or a movie star. I think I've mentioned that before. Not quite the movie star at this point. Getting there. Anyway, no. So yeah, I started at this job, and I kind of got that job through the school I went to, which was Toorak College, and the name of the school helped a
Yes.
lot because at this stage I was only 16. So I had not finished school. I'm not going to finish school because I was like, I've had enough. I want to go out and start doing this thing. Was a little bit of a shock to the system, though, I must say, because one thing I noticed that, I was thrown in the deep end, basically with
Mm,
hardly any training. You just throw in, then you find out for yourself and keep your fingers crossed, and you either survive it or you don't.
mm.
And I was not prepared for the work world. And I'm sure it's different now, but a lot of school systems back then never prepared you for the workforce. You didn't know what to expect. You didn't know how to basically open up a check account or a banking account on your own.
Yeah.
Those things that should. I'm sure they do it now, but
Yes.
I found it quite a shock. A little bit like, oh boy, is this what it's all about? Quite, cutthroat. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and it set up my grounding for the rest of my life and
Yeah.
my work life, of course. But it took me at least 3 to 4 years working at this place that was slave driven. I was working 6 days a week, so I only had Sunday off, and I was traveling from the city to Frankston, which is the end of the train line.
Mm,
And that's about an hour's train travel each way. And of course, most people in those days would go to the city to work.
mm,
I'd be going the opposite. So when I was coming back at night time and it's dark, because
mm.
I wasn't, I had to work late sometimes. Then there'd be no one on the train, or and I did have an incident on that train once,
Mm.
and it was I was the only one in the carriage. It was dark. It was winter, and on my way back, and it was an express for about 15 minutes through certain stations because I knew it so well. I knew what was coming up, and I had what they call a skinhead. Remember the skinheads?
Ah, yeah, that's a throwback.
Yeah, they
Mm.
all had shave. Basically, they were shaven head and really tough, and they
Yes.
they were like a group, that you wouldn't want to mess with.
Yeah.
They were kind of mean spirited teenagers, I guess, or young people. And this one came up with a knife and started doing
Wielding.
this and sitting in front of me and toying with me. And I'm looking out the window, and you see the reflection, and I'm trying not to look. And I think I know instinctively as they don't give them anything, any excuse. Don't say anything. Don't look at them. Don't do anything. But I was terrified. And I was looking at, and this was actually by the time I was just before I could start driving. So I was 17 and a half. And I was like, oh my God. I said, I thought my life is over. I was thought about all the fun I'd had, up until then, and thinking, this is it. I'm not going to survive. And he did come up a few times and then flicked, was one of those flick knives.
Yeah.
And then I saw the station coming up where I knew between that, that express part, that I knew where to get off. And it was the old trains that weren't electric. So you could actually manually open the doors. And they used to call them red rattlers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so then he did come up, and I knew it wasn't long before I could try and jump out of this train. And he did nick my neck, and I'm thinking this, I'm done, I'm done. Then he walked away right at the right time. And he didn't know. And I opened the door and I did one of those flips like they do on the movies. I flipped on the platform going like this, and then I ran. You didn't have phones back, you didn't have mobile phones or cell phones. And I ran to a phone box, called my mum and dad, was terrified. Luckily, the next week I got my license. So, I kangaroo jumped all the way. My dad got a car and we kangaroo jumped all the way down to Frankston. I didn't care. It took me forever to get there, but I was a good driver later on. As far as the job is concerned, though, it had some wonderful aspects, of course. In those days, you got to travel everywhere. They'd send you everywhere. I went to first trips were local, going to the Gold Coast, going to Tasmania, to the casino, and I was only 16 and I was gambling. Oops. But I won money. They didn't seem to bother. They'd send you in a group of travel agents. So basically, so you could all inspect wherever you're going. And then when you came back, you could actually let people know, you've been to Bali, which I did, the Bali trip, which was wonderful. It was my first international trip. That
Wow.
was a big deal.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. It was great. I went on a cruise with one of the girls from work. Because we were working so hard, he could see we were going to break. So the boss he knew, and he would, oh, I'll send you two girls on a cruise next week. So it was a Pacific cruise for 2 weeks. Absolutely amazing. Mind you, we'd never do a cruise again. Um, Sorry. I know people love cruises, but I felt we were young girls, we were
Mm.
18, and we had boys annoying us a
Mm.
lot. And the problem is when you're on a cruise, you can't get away from them.
No.
But regardless of that, we had a fun time. At the same time, my parents moved into a house in an Edwardian house. This was when I was 19, which
Mm.
was built in the turn of the century, 19th century, 20th
Yep.
century, 1900, 1901. And that was another story in itself because that was definitely haunted. There was
Oh,
no doubt, absolutely no doubt whatsoever. And when my brother was there, we were still living there as a family, and my um, I remember one time going to bed, knowing I got to get up for the train. It was I'm working hard. I wasn't that tired, but I knew I had to get some sleep. And everybody's going it's upstairs, so everyone's going to the bathroom. Lights are on, and so I can see outside my bedroom. I didn't have the door closed or anything, so I knew what was going on. I wasn't asleep. All of a sudden, I had this weird sensation, and I'm thinking, "Is this?" And I looked down, and the bed was way down there. So what I did was what I did is I crossed my arms behind me, thinking, "Oh no, this can't be right." And it was all air. It was all air, and I'm looking down. I'm thinking, and I'm looking out there, and I wasn't. You'd think I'd go start screaming, but I wasn't screaming. I just felt weird, and all of a sudden I got lowered down, and I was back on the bed. My brother had things happen. My mother had things happen, but we didn't know this till we sold that house. In fact, we got out of there because it was freaky, spooky. And I'll finish the house thing. Sorry, because it is really
yeah.
freaky.
Yeah.
So we find out all about that. But what happened the night we were leaving, my brother and I were moving into an apartment together. My parents were going to move to Queensland, to Noosa.
Wow.
So this is where the back and forth starts happening in the 20s for me as well, because I wanted to go up there, but that's another story. Anyway, to finish that story, this was a little cul-de-sac. It was a very expensive area. If Toorak's a very expensive
Mm.
suburb. House was expensive.
Still is.
So I remember my dad and I went round to go around and put the hose away when it was all sold and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And then we went back there, and I was in my little cars waiting for Dad, hurry up, hurry up. And it was just going dusk. It was summer, and all of a sudden, I saw the guy in his Jag go into his house. Then all of a sudden, I heard this blood curdling scream. And then I see this guy, it's like a film, jump over the big brick fence in a black balaclava and black, the whole deal, and stopped and looked at me because it was a small cul-de-sac. And I've got the keys to the car and I'm like, I'm terrified. I'm totally terrified. And my dad comes running out. Goes, what's that? I said, oh, no, I think something's happened. So my dad's asthmatic. He goes running off after this guy in the mask, which was stupid. I called, ambulance and everything, but uh, I'll try to make it short. The guy's neck was cut right round. He was actually the CEO of Commonwealth Bank back in those days.
Wow.
And we knew someone a family friend who worked there as one of management, and apparently was not very well liked. It was an ex-disgruntled employee. Now, he did die twice, but he actually ended up surviving. Of course, he sold and he moved to South Australia after that. But that was kind of the end of that haunted, messy, really weird place. But anyway, so
Wow.
that was that. So my parents trotted up to Noosa. By this stage, I had really got a lot under my belt with work, where it got to the time where people knew me. I had enough in my resume to change, to go to, because I wanted to be near the city, of course. I didn't want to do that traveling anymore. So I went back I applied for the National Australia Bank Travel, and I got that job. And I became a corporate consultant. And that was great. It was close to home. I didn't have to, travel anymore. Made some great friends. Again, some terrific trips as Fiji. I went to Paris, London, Singapore, all these things, by the time I was 20 and 21. Um, Once I had tickets I never used. I got first class tickets with Pan Am that I never had a chance to use to go to the States. And I never wanted to go to the States anyway. Isn't it amazing how I ended up in the States?
So,
That's just another story.
but
So
when you had
yeah.
that slave boss back then,
Mm,
he was
mm.
how long did you have him for?
That was from 16 through to 20.
Okay, so it's 4 years.
Nearly 4 years I stuck it out.
You stuck it out. I like how you say that. And
Mm.
they expected what, 150% from you all of the time?
Oh, yeah. For example, not just the work. If, for example, because he had a beautiful house in Mount Eliza, rich with all the trimmings and the gorgeous Swedish wife and
Oh,
the whole deal, right? He had
mm.
this beautiful property on the beach. It wasn't just our work. For example, he had ABBA come down in a helicopter when ABBA were out doing concerts or came
Mm.
out to Australia. He had them down and had this big party, and we had to be waitresses on a Sunday. Our job didn't stop at
Had travel.
consulting and 12-hour day. I mean, they were really and very poorly paid. But this is what he did. He would get people from school who were smart.
Mm.
He would know that they either got to be caught there or they've got to try and go back to school, which would be pretty hard to do.
Mm.
So, like I said, as hard as it was and as stressful as it was, and I will say this one day, it was so stressful because the lady I was working with, she got a job somewhere else. She'd had enough, and I got no help for a month. And I was in like in the shopping centre parts or on the outside. So they always get real
Oh,
busy.
yes.
And I mean, I was on my own. So if I wanted to go to the bathroom, I had to lock the door, put clothes, go all the way upstairs, come in, that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
one day, and I had to work till Friday nights at 9 o'clock, till 9 o'clock at night. And I remember one time I was overwhelmed. I couldn't do all the work. I just couldn't do all the work. It was piling up. People were just coming in. I'm going,
Mm.
and one day I always remember it. It was around 5 o'clock, and these people came and said, "Well, have we got our passports yet? Have you got our passports yet?" And I sat there. I couldn't answer. I think it's almost like a breakdown, and it
Yeah.
actually pretty well. And I was the only one that this happened to at that place because it was that stressful. And I'm sitting there, they said, "Are you all right?" I said, "I don't think so." And
Wow.
we had a hotline to the head office, which was a few blocks away. And I just said, "You got to come someone to say, what? I can't, I'm sorry, I'm nervous." So I had a week off and had to go see a doctor, and they said it was all stress.
Mm.
And that was my time when I said, "That's it. I'll get a job somewhere else." And I did. So it
Which
worked out
is
well.
wonderful. So that experience then, before you moved up to Noosa and you got the national one, which obviously was still a lot of work, but better, I'm
I got that.
assuming.
Yeah, I got that in Melbourne. Yeah, that was in
Okay.
Melbourne. Yeah, yeah.
So, and the experience that you had, I can see that, you said that it shaped your work ethic and it obviously would have set you some boundaries. And what I got from that was that, resilience first. It's definitely
Yes.
what happened there. And, it did set up a lot of foundations, you said, for your life, but, it was lacking that safety and security for yourself because it was pushing every limit possible. So there was a lot of strong learning in there. Go tell me what you were thinking right then.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree with you. As hard as it was, and it's like anything, isn't it? That's difficult or challenging. Let's put it that way. Like, let's use the positive word, which is challenging. Um, Anything that's challenging like that is going to shape you. It's
Yes.
going to build your character. It's going to make you stronger when something else, another challenge hits you. And there always will be change, and there will always be challenges. And if anybody says otherwise, I they must stay at home in their room all day.
And,
So yes, yeah, and
and had a
pretend that
cloak.
nothing is. Yeah, that's right. So it's yeah, does take some determination, but I have those qualities anyway. I have persistence, determination. I don't like to be beaten. I always like
That's
to
a
win.
challenge. I like,
Yes, and
yes.
I think one of my not so great things was, and I still battle with it, is balancing my life properly. You see, I can be very single-minded. Oh, if I got to go on something, I'm just on it, and everything else just disappears
Mm.
because there it is, and I got to get to this goal, and I've got to do that. And sometimes it's not always good for you to be singly focused like that. Perfectionism is another problem. I'm
But
better at it now.
you're aware. So you're aware that when you go into that focus, you're like, oh, hang on a minute, I'm not balancing my life. I need to, check in again. And then that
Mm,
perfectionism, when you're in it, and you decide whether you want to be in it or not. So it's
yes.
really good that your awareness is there. But what I wanted to go back to just quickly was the travel experiences that you had, because you rattled them all off and you said Bali, was great. Just in that time before you even, well, maybe even some of the ones after you got the job in Melbourne, with the national one as well,
Mm,
among all your travels in both those times of
mm.
working for different people, what places or place stands out the most and why?
Ooh. I guess London and Paris because it was huge. I mean, that was the biggest trip, the longest trip, um, and as a young girl, it was I was the youngest on the tour of the agents, and it was magnificent, and it was I just I started to see more of the world. I think though, I loved Fiji then, and I loved the Fijians. They were so sweet and lovely, and the lifestyle was beautiful and relaxed, and oh, it was just nice, you know. I just remember like it's probably not the same now, you see, and that's when you go back to places. It's
Yeah.
been many, many years ago. They're not going to be the same.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's best just to keep that memory,
Mm.
which is
And
what I have. I have plenty of great memories.
and I know you do.
Yeah.
And so, London, Paris opened you up to the world. Fiji gave you that sense of relaxation and freedom that maybe, that's one day what I'd like to have. Funny you mentioned Fiji. I'm going to hopefully go there next year myself, but it'll be completely different to what you're saying. But what's one moment, during your travel times that made you feel completely alive or free?
Um, I guess I guess the feed of New Zealand was a great. Oh, that was later on. But anyway, but I did love New Zealand. Now, that came later
Yeah.
when I was doing a different role.
Yep.
I changed roles quite a bit in my 20s. In fact, I did it so much in my 20s when I wrote this. You just put the timeline down, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, oh yes, I think I was still in my 20s trying to find out who I was and what I'm doing.
Wow.
That's definitely was part of why I kept moving and trying to find something that will probably make me happy.
Yeah.
So I was looking outside for everything, and I think
Yeah.
I've done a lot of that when I was younger. It's different now, of course, which I've
Yeah.
learned, but yeah, yeah.
So that was
But
sort of like, yeah, go. Which one felt completely alive or free to you?
Fiji because it was so peaceful and the sea and just everything and the people were everyone was nice, everyone was lovely. They were all relaxed. Nobody was pushing or trying to sell you something
Mm.
it was just you could be yourself
Very
and not
genuine.
have any. That was true. It's great. So you can go there and do the same thing.
So what you just said in about your 20s, where you were searching for this stuff outside of you, and you did a lot of roles, and you can definitely elaborate on that even more. The lessons that you just encountered, basically, because this is sort of the next question, the unexpected lessons was that you were searching for things for to help find out what you're going to do for the rest of your life was happening all of then all at once. And so these encounters all happened during that travel time that actually changed you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, was the beginning of change.
Yeah. Okay.
Was the
That,
beginning of change,
yeah.
beginning of change. Because now I don't want to backtrack, but back
Do
at
it.
the old job before I went to the city one, is I met this boy. He was a soccer player from
Oh, yeah.
England, and it
Mm.
was part of the group that we booked travel for. So he was like, "Oh, he fell in love with me." And I was like, "Oh, it was my first real love." Ah, you go.
Or goo goo.
I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. I just can't believe it did that. But anyway, it was nice, and he had to go back, and we write each other because we write to each other letters,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he was going to try and get back, and it was funny because during this period of the early '80s at the National Australia Bank job, um, that became very stressful too. And I
Mm.
didn't get myself in it. It became, well, people were leaving and more was being put on me and da 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 da. Now,
Mm.
this stage, my mum and dad are up in Noosa. So I'm thinking, you know what? And they bought themselves a restaurant up in the mountains.
Um,
And they'd never had a restaurant before. They always would try something new. Believe me, they always tried something different.
what was the restaurant called?
Misty's
Oh, yes.
up in Montville.
Mm. My first
Yeah,
restaurant that I ever worked at.
you are. Oh gosh, I
Mm.
did. I know you know.
So when I was
What
16 and a
what
half, that was
year?
my first job. They took me on.
What year was that? Oh, that's crazy.
1989, maybe.
Right, I missed you. Yeah, they sold up. I think they sold in around 1985. They did. Yeah, and there was a reason why they did that.
Yeah.
Um,
But cool.
Anyway, so yeah, so I went up there. Yeah, I went up there, and I thought, oh, well, I'll go help them in the restaurant. And then
Yeah.
I took a massage course, and
Wow.
I did all these things. Oh yeah, I was very into the yoga and got into all. I went vegetarian. I mean, I did the. Yeah, there's no halfway. There's no half measures with me. I'm going to do it, yeah, I can do it properly. And the beach, and I was on the water. Oh gosh, it was just loved that place then. It was quaint and funny. They were funny people that lived there then. It was weird as, and my brother ended up coming up, and he was a hairdresser
Hmm.
in Melbourne,
Yeah.
and he used to, he used to do the stars' hairs. He was very, very good at what he did. He worked for one of I don't know, what was the big department store? There was a great salon there and all the women would go to.
Stefan?
Anyway, no, 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 not Stefan's. No, 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 no. Buckley and Nunn was the old department store in Collins Street.
Okay.
It was a very exclusive kind of
Yep.
department store.
Yep.
And then they had this very fancy salon. He would work there, and he got sick of the city, so he ended up going up. And he's still in Noosa, by the way. And he opened up a salon in 1983, I think 84, and been there ever since. Not he closed the salon down, but he went back and forth to India. I mean, that's another story as well. But yeah, so he was there, and so it was kind of fun. And then here's the hilarious part. So Noosa, then there was hardly anything there.
No.
There was a little store. There was a camping ground towards the end of the main street.
Yep.
And there was an old motel with stilted thing, there wasn't any fancy. There was a
No.
jean store, I remember that, and next to it a little tiny grocery store. And the only original thing that's there is the accommodation Natanya, which is down the end of the street before you head up towards the national park. So it's
Yes.
the end of the main street there, right? That's still there. Unbelievable. Next to that were two blocks of land on the beach with
Yep.
old Queenslanders that they were falling down. So you
Mm.
would have had to pull them down. And my dad said, you know what, I'll give you a deposit since you started working, when you've been working. And after that, I went back to Melbourne and got a proper job. And he said, now, you need to, you need to do that, and then you can pay it off, and I'll help you save. And I went, oh, well, and you know what I said? I said, I'm young, right? I said, oh, he said, who the hell would live here? There's no one here. There's
Oops.
nobody here. There's nothing to do except go to the beach. And so, I could have kicked myself, because you can imagine if I.
Yeah, I can.
So it was a stupid idea. Um, so yeah, it was a nice time. It was a time for me to regroup.
Okay.
I think I needed to be away from the stress for a bit, for a while, a
Oh,
couple of
yeah.
years, which I did do.
Yeah.
It was great. But by then I'd had enough. And I thought, I got to get back to the city. I'm young. I can't, if there's no one here, I'm going to go.
Wasn't going to go
So I
anywhere
drove back.
fast up there.
No, so I drove back to Melbourne. I got myself a job. Instead of consulting in travel, I went into sales. So I work for a company called Contiki,
Oh, yeah.
which do 18 to 35 camping trips all over the world. And yeah, I ran that for them in the state of Victoria.
Wow.
And I got lucky. It was great because I had some good background on my resume, and obviously I did well there, and it was fun. We had lots of fun
Yes.
stuff, and it was a lot of work. And that's where I my first time and I remember I just started and it was really hard because you have to go to the travel agents and promote the product. And then sometimes I also had to do film nights on a Friday night in the city, down at some hotel in the city for or potential customers who want to take the Contiki trips. She would run an 18 this guy sounds so old, 18 millimeter film. Sometimes I didn't quite know how to set it up properly, and talk about it and everything. But I was only into the job 2 weeks, so didn't know everything yet. I
Yeah.
had a little bit of
Yeah.
training, but I wasn't. And I had to go and speak it was actually National Australia Bank Travel. They had a auditorium for potential customers where you were going to go and present film and talk about the tours, and there were 200 people. I'm going, oh my gosh, I've got to speak in front of 200 people. And what if they ask something I don't know? Because they could.
Oh,
There was, which I'm thinking I had no support. That I was absolutely sweating. I said to the manager of the bank, who was running that, I said, look, I really, he said, you'll be all right. He said, here, have a glass of wine. I went, okay. Like this, because I had to calm my nerves. But I got through it. And after that, and the more you do that sort of thing, the
yeah.
better it becomes. But the one thing about that particular company was terrific. I got pretty good money. I got a company car. So it was pretty good. And what I loved about it was they sent me on a 2-week camping trip. Now, you see, I'm not really a person who likes camping at all.
I
So don't
knew that
ask
was
me
coming.
why. Yeah.
Oh
And
boy.
I don't like tents and I don't like cabins and I don't. Anyway, I thought, and I don't like being on a bus because that drives me nuts. It
Mm.
drives me nuts. Anyway, we did the two islands. It was 2 weeks. So it was a proper trip because I had to play passenger and I had to play spy, company spy for the
Wow.
trip because the trip ended in Auckland and the head office of Kentucky is in Auckland, New Zealand.
Right.
So I had to go report to the higher ups after. So I had to pretend I was a waitress and I had an orange sleeping bag. I remember I get so bored. I used to jump up and down the bus hallway, jump up and down in my stupid, like I was a worm or something. Anything just to kill the boredom. Everyone thought I was stupid. And I made friends with this lovely girl. She was really nice. I wasn't allowed to say anything to anyone. And the courier or anything, I had to report, I had to keep notes on what was going on. Oh, and there's some dreadful things that happened. The courier would be sleeping with the wife of some guy on that trip, and all these sorts of things would go on. And I'm thinking, oh boy, these guys are going to be in so much trouble because it's all a big no-no. You don't
Yeah.
fraternize with the passengers or people on the trip. So that was really fun. And then the girlfriend I made afterwards, she said, she said, I ended up being able to tell her a few weeks later after it was all over. I said, well, actually, I wasn't. This is who I am. She went, what? She said, you were the craziest on the trip. I said, well, I was acting. So that was my first acting role.
Oh wow. And it's like you were the mystery shopper and you weren't allowed to tell anyone. That's amazing. And you
It
never
was, it
thought
was, it
they never thought
no.
that that kind of thing would actually go on, but you can understand why it would because well there was you were the social media.
I guess that's why they have like air marshals on planes, or they have people that check up, what the service is like, and they do a lot of that now, I believe. But I didn't. That was my first. I never knew that happened, and that was back in '84. So I was
Mm.
24 at that point. By the way, 24. What else? There was. I bet you I've forgotten something
We'll go back
because
and
I
have a
always
quick
do.
look. Was there anything
Oh, and
before?
during all that time from all that travel days, I made friends with the Ansett, sorry, with the Ansett crowd.
Yeah,
Um,
lovely
yeah,
crowd.
so they used to go to this pub, that I've forgotten what it was called. It was famous, but it was built next to where they'd worked. And I made some really good friends. And that was my first introduction to, because when I first started going out, then was only 18. And I was pretty sheltered because I went to girls' school, right? And then so I didn't really, and so I was introduced to gay and lesbian, and I didn't, but it was all great. And you know what? I was sort of pleased early on that I had those experiences because they're all just people like, it was never a problem for me. Because I
Mm.
think for some people it might have been, but that industry, was very much like I made some great friends out of that too. Long term friends. Still got two of them that I'm in touch with. Yeah,
Beautiful.
that's wonderful. So that was what I wanted to say there. Um, please interrupt me because
No,
you wish to.
go to the next
Oh,
one. I
I,
do have
I
a
got all
question
the
to
other
ask, but
ones.
I can say again.
I covered all the islands. Great Keppel Island, go get wrecked at Great Keppel Island, Hamilton Island, Lizard Island, Hayman Island, all the islands, Airlie Beach, all of those island trips we
And
did
what
multiple
year was
times.
that?
Don't tell me you were there, were you? We were.
I was in Cairns at,
Oh, yeah, it would have been 23, 22.
so it was
So
still
that
sort
would have
of
been 1982, 83.
yeah. So I'm just 5 years behind, right? So I was there 86, 87, 88.
Just missed every time. We're all following the same pattern. You were following me. That's what you were doing. Look what happened. You
I
stalked me,
caught
and now
up. Because yes, we used to get the boats before they went to New Zealand. They would build the boats in Cairns and they'd make them for New Zealand, and we had to take them for test drives. So we would take them out for the weekend, sometimes with the owners that built it, sometimes with the people that were buying it. And we'd go to Lizard Island, we'd go to Green Island, we'd go to Hayman Island, we'd go to all the islands
yeah,
uh, and
done
spend a
everything.
weekend there and, work out if the boat's got anything wrong with it, all that sort of stuff. So I done all the islands as well, but in a different way.
Different way. Do you remember before? I know I'm digressing slightly, but the island, her name was Sybil, and she was been there forever. And I'm not sure whether it was wasn't Great Keppel, it was some other island. Oh, and
Oh.
it slipped my mind. I don't know. She was like a real character. She was older and she'd dress up in weird clothes, and I don't think they do that now. Really,
No, I don't
actually.
like I was quite young and I probably wouldn't take any notice of those things. Young being I was 10, 11, 12, 13. That was my era, but I
Oh,
just hop on the boat and play with the kids pretty much. Entertain the
no.
kids was I started babysitting, so if there's any kids on the trip, I would be minding them on the boat kind of thing. So
Ah,
yeah,
right.
it was very interesting. But what I wanted to know is, that transition that you did with leaving school, going straight into a job that was stressful and hectic, didn't know anything about, and then of course you later transitioned to a better job, still stressful, still no support, but eventually obviously getting support. Just in that moment before we move on to the next thing, what
Mm.
advice would you give young women today who want to make that same leap? Because it's still happening.
I would see each time I went for something, it was going to be better than the last.
True.
So, so I stayed at Kentucky, but then I sourced a position with the Northern Territory Tourist Commission, which
Okay.
paid exceptionally well. Go to the Rock every week for a year, a weekend for a year, taking travel agents, but exceptionally well paid and not the stress that I had with these others. So I did find something there that was normal, more normal,
Wow.
well, almost normal.
So, what would be the advice is that, is it about if you find yourself in a stressful situation, you look for
Get
something
out.
that's not, yes. Don't
So
stay.
get out. It's not worth it. The only and as going back though, and it's very important to stress that if you get yourself something to do at that early age, because this is your first job, right? So you get yourself into a job that's going to grow you, and you will get better pay, and as you move forward, you've got to put in that those few hard years at the beginning. If you get stuck with someone that's a slave driver, you need to put in that first few years. And once you've done that, you've got some backing behind you. You get to know people in the industry a little more too, and then people get to know that you work well. Also, particularly when you work for somebody like that, they have a name, and people know that they are slave drivers. So if you've worked for them and you've stuck it out, then you must have some sort of fortitude.
Mm.
So
Mm.
yeah. But so that yeah, my advice is if you do get something like that, stick it out for a few years as much as you can to get something behind you. Then after that, you can start to get choosy.
Oh, I like it. I like it. So what I wanted to move on, and if there's anything that you've got to add for the travel or anything that I've, skip over, please go back to it. But it was on sexual harassment. because that was pretty huge, back
Oh,
in the 80s.
yes, yes. Yes,
And
I think, well, yes, yes. I think I may have mentioned the one I had when I first started working at 16. I think we explained that from the
refresh my memory.
the okay. So yep, that was when I was only working there in the branch office with my friend Anne, became my friend Anne, for a very short time. And the manager from the camera shop next door would come and get us coffees because you'd have to go into the center and go get your coffees. And so he would buy us coffees, and we knew Anne, and it was like, oh, okay, it's so and so. Quite frankly, I don't remember his name, and I don't ever want to.
No.
Uh, and I remember one morning I opened up because I got in earlier. I know it's only two, so I had a key. I would open that branch office up, and you would close the door and lock it before,
Yeah.
9 o'clock, and then Anne would come in. Da, da, da. So I'd just be prepping up for the day. And I remember one time he knocked on the door, so I know who he is. So, and he said, "Can you open the door?" So I opened the door, and he said to me, I'm looking to go to Hong Kong. I want some brochures, general information brochures on Hong Kong." He happened to know that we only kept general information brochures out the back. So off
Mm.
I trot, innocent, no idea. And off I go into the back. And as I'm facing and I'm facing away, someone's behind me. He grabs me. He starts ripping the clothes off, starts mauling. And I can still smell that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, ugh. I mean, ugh.
Mm.
I was in total shock, and I don't know if I whacked him. I don't know what I did. And he went. He knew he'd done the wrong thing. Idiot. Off he goes, and I'm on the desk crying because and my clothes are half. And Anne turns up and she says, "What?" And I told her. She said, "Leave it with me." Now, back in the 70s, you couldn't, women didn't, it's better now. Women have leg to stand on. Back then, the man was always right, always, it had nothing to do with, oh, you couldn't sue, or it was no such thing.
Yeah.
Really, there was no such thing. It was
Mm.
dreadful, actually.
Mm.
And she went in, she took care and came in, she said, "You'll never see him again." Whatever she said to him worked because we never saw him again. But the experience itself, that was the start of several that happened later on as well in work situations.
So would you
Mm.
say that that was the first one, which means that you then
Yeah.
sort of knew that that kind of stuff happened?
Well, I was still innocent. I didn't know. I thought it was a one-off. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure. And because I worked with a woman while I was at that place, when I went afterwards, I really didn't have any problem until later on I never had that problem
Yeah. So you still had
until I don't.
support, like you said, you had women there, but you actually got
Yeah.
support. You got support from her to stop it from happening, but there wasn't necessarily any support to say, what you've been through, like they have now. You can go through CASA,
No,
and
no,
and
no.
you had to bottle that experience up, and wow, this happened to me, but let's just sweep it on the carpet now and get on with it.
And I guess that didn't have a very good bearing on my opinion of men.
No.
And particularly as my dad had left as a teenager with a younger woman, that sort of
Yeah.
stuff, and it went at a vulnerable age of 12. So you start to add those pieces together, and I guess I didn't have a great respect for the opposite sex
Yeah.
at that point.
And
So I
that
was
and
very much a career woman.
And that answered my question, which is, did those experiences impact how you saw yourself or trusted others in the workplace? So, yeah, it affected you in that way and allowed you to want to focus on your career.
Absolutely. And it did. I did.
And it
I
drove you
really
to that
did.
that place. And so in the travel industry, did you come across more of that?
I'm trying to think. No, no,
Okay.
no. And then I ended up leaving the travel industry after for different reasons.
Yeah.
But that comes forward. I don't want to confuse the issue too much.
So
Are you worn out yet?
no, 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 absolutely not. I'd absolutely love it. And with what This is an interesting question. So, what would you say now to your younger self who went through that?
Um, well, let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go. There's nothing you there's nothing you can really do. But yes, you can go sue people and things now. I know and all that and have them up
Yeah.
and you can, but it's a lot of work and you're dragging yourself through the stuff unless you are totally. I mean, I wasn't raped.
No.
That's a bit different.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's not a lot of difference, but the intention was there, I guess. But that would have been quite a different thing altogether, I think. But I think that to my younger self, because of the times in the 70s, it was a different story.
Yeah.
If I'm talking to someone younger today, if I was younger now, I'd be completely different. I'd be saying, you go to the authorities, you go to H, we've got HR now, you've got all these things that, all these support systems and get some psychological help as well to get through the trauma of it. But we
Yeah.
didn't have any of that. So all I could say to my younger self is, well, just get on with it, which is basically what I did.
Yeah. Get on with
Just
it,
get on with
let
it.
go, and yeah,
Try not to hold it.
yeah, because yeah, it can, as you said,
It
you
just,
can still smell the person, you can still remember the thing, so it still had, a traumatic effect
yeah.
on you to like an imprint, so to speak. So it's got that memory, and that's why it's really good to say, well, what would you say? And so the let go is the biggest thing, um, because I
There's
went,
another thing too.
yeah,
Sorry, but
no, go.
let go of it, but also keep it in mind because
Yes.
what you do find is that you don't trust situations. So you don't trust, say, oh, in this case it was men, but generally across the board, I didn't trust people because they would lie or they would do. So I'd be looking for the signs, or I'd be looking for. Do you know? I'd be very aware.
Yep.
So be aware of your surroundings. Listen to what people are saying. Don't take everything as gospel.
Yep. So that's face
Question
value
everything.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that knock at the door, you let them in because you knew them. And it's like, from then on, anyone else that knocked at the door, it was like, well, I'm not letting anyone in until someone else is here, kind of thing. That's that
Yeah.
awareness that you're learning.
Yeah. But sometimes, and I was caught a few times not knowing in situations that I had no idea that would happen.
And
But
so
that
they
comes
came.
later in life.
Okay, that came in the lady. So is there anything else that you wanted to add from that time, more time, from when did you, so was you were 23, 24, and you'd got the other job up in Northern Territory.
Yes, 25, yeah, 24, 25. I got, yeah, the job there. I wasn't in Northern Territory. I was based in Victoria. I
Okay.
was selling it but I would take travel agents up to climb the rock because back then you could, of course.
Yeah.
I'm actually glad they gave it back, Uluru
Yeah.
back to the Aboriginal. I thought that was, even then I thought this is just so, it's not right. It's this
Yeah.
sacred place. And we're all traipsing, over this sacred site,
Yeah.
all for money, and they built Sheraton hotels, they built all the fancy hotels there. Just, it was a money-making scheme. And I mean, it was nice for people to see it. I was very lucky to have been able to climb it 12 times in 1 year. That's a bit worn out of that one. Um, but it was an experience, but I'm really pleased that they gave that back to them. And I learned a lot of things. I learned a lot about the culture,
Isn't it
learned a lot
good?
about history, which was good. I did enjoy that part.
And so was there anything up to the age of, from then to the age of 29 that you wanted to finish up with today?
I think we're going to. I think we're going to have to. I'll
Do
stop at
part.
25. I'll
Okay.
stop at 25 for the moment, but there was a move and there was something else. But one significant thing that happened when mum and dad had that restaurant and they sold it because she got cancer, got stomach
Okay.
cancer. And so she was in a pretty bad way. And 2 months later, she'd make sure you get medical insurance, health insurance. because, back then you had Medicare, but if you wanted to get the care of someone or a particular specialist for something, you had to pay out of pocket unless you
Yeah.
had private cover, which is the
Mm.
industry I got into way later on, funnily enough. And I realized the importance of it because I got it, and 3 months later, I got something. I got a cyst and ended up getting a thing called endometriosis, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
had to travel with the rest of my life. And yeah, that was kind of interesting. But yeah, so that was sort of the stop at 25 because there are still a lot more changes up to 29.
Great. And I can't wait to actually get through those with you as well. So we're going to make that
Is it going
part
to probably
two.
take us 10 years to get through my life up to now? Okay.
We're going to
Sorry.
take part, we're going to do part two of episode four with
Okay.
you next time we meet.
Hmm.
So I think
Great.
that that was a wonderful opening up and a wonderful insight into those years. And wow, yes, there was a lot going on. I could feel the pressure. I could feel the stress and the fastness. So it was wonderful to go on that journey. Is there anything else to add before we go?
No, I think it's all good. Thank you very much again for listening to my dribble,
Yeah,
my little bits and pieces, my
it's
little
insight.
quips of things. But as we talk, I do laugh because you do realize your age. I don't feel my age, right? I feel like always have been. But when you're talking about things like phone boxes and no cell phones or mobile phones and trains that don't open themselves,
Yeah, no
doors
one
open
knows
themselves,
about that stuff.
don't even
But
know
there's
about it.
going to
So
be
embarrassing.
people that remember. And,
Yeah.
it's about being able to link to your story because I'm sure there's others that, have been through something similar. But at the same time, you're a woman, I feel, of, you said it, determination, power, direction, persistence, all that sort of stuff. And these years have been creating that, even from probably when you were 12, it's been creating that. But it's that push
Mhm.
and that next thing for life about finding out more of who you are. So I think that these are really interesting insights. But what I want to do is thank you, Vicky. And
Thank
until
you,
next time,
Michelle.
I'm going to
Yes.
press pause and we'll catch up again in a sec.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.